I want to start today with a number that, honestly, it just feels wrong. Like, statistically, it shouldn't even exist.
Okay.
We all think of running as the most natural thing a human can do,
Yeah.
right? It's primal. We evolved to do it.
Right. Just put on shoes and go.
Exactly. It's the ultimate low-barrier sport. But according to the deep dive we're doing today into the data from Sundried, somewhere between 20% and a staggering 80% of runners get injured every single year.
Every single year. It is a crazy number when you hear it like that.
It's insane. I mean, think about it. If 80% of people playing tennis blew out a knee every year, nobody would play tennis.
The courts would be empty.
We'd shut them down.
If 80% of people who did yoga ended up in a cast, we'd call it a dangerous activity. But with running, we just sort of accept it.
We do. We wear the shin splints and the stress fractures almost like a badge of honor.
And that's this massive paradox, right? Running seems so simple. It's just willpower and putting one foot in front of the other. But underneath, it's a biomechanical minefield.
And most of us are walking through that minefield without a map. And that is exactly what we're unpacking today. We're looking at the science of why we break, and we're drawing heavily from Sundried's research on injury prevention. And spoiler alert, the culprit usually isn't your shoes.
Nope.
Or the surface you run on, or even your foot strike.
No, it's much more fundamental than that. It's the classic runner's curse. Too much too soon.
Much too soon. TMTS. It sounds like a bumper sticker, but the biology behind it is fascinatingly complex.
It really is.
So our mission for this deep dive is to explain why you are most likely to get injured exactly when you feel your absolute fittest, and then how to use a specific mathematical approach, the 4-week cycle, to stop it from happening.
It's all about moving away from running by feel and starting to run by the data. Because, as we're going to see, your feelings are often the very thing getting you hurt.
Okay, let's start right there. That feels so counterintuitive. You're saying I'm most at risk when I feel great, when I'm crushing my workouts.
Yes. In fact, that feeling of I'm invincible is often the first major warning sign. To understand why, you have to look at the massive disconnect between your engine and your chassis.
The engine being my heart and lungs.
Correct. And the chassis being your structural system, so your bones, tendons, ligaments. The sources from Sundried talk about this concept called asynchronous adaptation.
Asynchronous adaptation. Okay, so in plain English, what's that?
It means your body parts do not upgrade at the same speed. Not even close.
Okay.
Your metabolic engine, your cardiovascular system, is incredibly plastic. It adapts really, really fast. When you start a new running plan, within just a few days, your plasma volume expands.
So wait, literally within the first week, my blood is changing.
Yes. And within, say, 7 to 10 days, your mitochondrial density increases. This is the little power plants inside your cells. So biologically, your engine gets this massive upgrade in just 2 or 3 weeks.
Which totally matches the lived experience of any new runner. The first week is absolute hell. You're gasping for air.
Oh, it's awful.
But by week 3, you're not wheezing anymore. You finish a run and you think, hey, I could have gone further.
Exactly. Your brain gets a very loud, very clear signal from the heart and lungs, and that signal is, we are fit, this is easy, let's go faster, let's go farther.
But the chassis, my bones and my tendons, they didn't get that memo.
Oh, they got the memo. They just work on what feels like a geological timeline compared to your heart.
Right.
Tendons, for example, are vascular. They have a very poor blood supply compared to muscle. They take weeks, even months, to properly strengthen. But the real saboteur here, the one that catches everyone, is the bone.
See, I think most people view bone as this dead structure, like a steel beam in a building. It's just there.
But it's living tissue. It's constantly reacting to stress. And here's where it gets really interesting and honestly a little scary. When you stress a bone with all those running impacts, it doesn't just immediately get stronger.
It doesn't.
No, it goes through a process called the remodeling transient.
The remodeling transient. Okay, break that down.
Imagine you want to upgrade a brick wall. You can't just slap new bricks on top of the old crumbling ones. You have to remove the old mortar first.
Okay, that makes sense.
The body does the same thing. It sends in cells called osteoclasts to remove old bone tissue that suffered microdamage. It literally digs a hole.
So to build the stronger bone, you have to tear down the old one first.
Exactly. And only after that do the osteoblasts, the builder cells, come in to lay down new, stronger bone. But that lag creates this window of vulnerability.
Okay.
Typically, between week 3 and week 8 of a new training block, your bone porosity actually increases.
Wait, hold on. You're saying that 4 weeks into my training plan, when I'm feeling awesome, my bones are literally more porous, more full of holes. than when I started sitting on the couch.
Yes, structurally, you were weaker at week 4 than you were at week 1.
That's terrifying.
It explains so much, doesn't it? Think about the timing. This is happening the exact moment your heart is screaming, I feel great, let's double the mileage.
So that's the trap. You have a Ferrari engine that you just dropped into a chassis that is currently up on blocks being rebuilt.
And that is why so many stress fractures happen, not in the first week of training, but in that week 4 to week 8 window. The engine wrote a check that the chassis just couldn't cash.
Wow. Okay, that makes perfect sense biologically. But sun-dried also goes heavy into the physics of this, because it's not just about feeling tired, it's about the sheer number of collisions.
It is entirely a physics equation.
Yeah.
We tend to measure our runs in minutes or miles, but your tissues, they measure runs and impacts.
Right.
Sun-dried outlines that every time you land, the ground reaction force is roughly 2.5 to 3 times your body weight.
Which is a huge amount of force. If I weigh 150 pounds, that's like 450 pounds slamming through my leg.
A step. Now do the math. An average runner takes about 1,500, maybe 1,700 steps per mile. So a short 3-mile run isn't just 3 miles.
It's 5,000 separate impacts.
5,000 impacts of 3 times your body weight. It is micro-trauma. That's the definition of training. If you run a 20-mile week, that's around 30,000 impacts. Yeah. And if you're training for a marathon doing 50 miles a week, you're looking at 75,000 impacts on your skeletal system every 7 days.
And this leads to what they call material failure, right? The paperclip analogy.
It's the perfect analogy.
Yeah.
Think of bending a paperclip. You bend it once, it's fine. You bend it back and forth 50 times, and it snaps.
Right.
It didn't snap because that last bend was stronger than the first one. It snapped because the cumulative training load exceeded the tissue load capacity.
Okay, so this brings up a huge question for me, and I think a lot of listeners are going to push back on this next part. I've always heard, run your easy days easy. If I run slower, isn't that safer? Doesn't that protect the paperclip?
This is the slow mile fallacy.
Yeah.
And frankly, it's one of the most dangerous misconceptions in running.
Really?
Sun-dried points out that your structural tissues, your bones and tendons, they do not care what your heart rate is. They don't care if you're breathing through your nose. They only care about the force and frequency of the collision.
So a slow mile is still a mile of impact.
In fact, it might even be worse for the chassis.
How can running slower be worse? That doesn't make any sense.
Think about your mechanics when you run slow. You often have a lower cadence, fewer steps per minute, and a longer ground contact time. You're spending more milliseconds on the ground absorbing that weight with every single step. You're sort of lingering on the impact.
Oh, wow. So instead of a quick, springy tap, it's more like a heavy, prolonged thud.
Exactly. So mechanically, a recovery run is not a free run for your bones. It might be a vacation for your lungs, but your tibia still has to handle the same 1,500 collisions per mile, maybe with even more low duration.
That completely changes how I view my junk miles. You know, those extra miles you just tack on to hit a round number.
Everyone does it.
Yeah, and I always thought, oh, I'll just go slow. It won't cost me anything.
Biologically, the cost is high. Volume is volume. You can't cheat the physics just because you're going slow.
So if unmanaged volume is the enemy, how do we actually manage it? For years, the golden rule has been, don't increase your mileage by more than 10% a week. Is that still the standard?
It's the standard folklore, yes. Most running apps still use it. But the sun-dried analysis argues that, well, it's actually pretty flawed mathematically.
How so?
It suffers from what they call the floor effect and the ceiling effect.
Okay, break those down for me. What's the floor effect?
Imagine a new runner doing just 5 miles a week. If they follow the 10% rule, next week they're allowed to run 5.5 miles.
Which is nothing. That's an extra half mile.
Right. It stifles progress. At that low volume, the absolute load is so small that a novice could probably jump to 7 or 8 miles, a 50% increase, and be totally fine. The rule holds them back.
Okay, so what about the ceiling effect? That one sounds more dangerous.
That's for the high mileage runner. Say you're an elite running 100 miles a week. A 10% increase is 10 miles.
That's 15,000 extra impacts in a single week.
Exactly.
Yeah, that sounds like a recipe for a stress fracture.
It is. So 10% is too conservative for beginners and way too aggressive for elites. The modern science, which sun-dried highlights, has moved to a much better metric, the ACWR.
ACWR.
The Acute Chronic Workload Ratio.
Okay, hold on. This is starting to sound like I need a PhD to go for a jog. Is this complicated?
It sounds complicated, but it's actually surprisingly simple. You just need 2 numbers. First is your acute load. That's the total of what you did in the last 7 days. Think of that number as your fatigue.
Got it. Last 7 days equals fatigue.
Second, your chronic load. That's the rolling average of what you did over the last 4 weeks. Think of that as your fitness. It's what your body is actually used to.
So acute is what I just did, and chronic is what I'm built for right now.
Correct. And you just divide the acute by the chronic. The result is your ratio.
And what's the magic number? Where do we want that ratio to be?
The sweet spot is between 0.8 and 1.3. If your ratio is in there, you're pushing just hard enough to get fitter, but not so hard that you break the machine.
And where's the danger zone?
Above 1.5. If your ratio hits 1.5, it means you're doing 50% more work this week than your body has been used to for the last month. Sun-Dried's data shows that this spike correlates incredibly highly with getting injured.
So instead of blindly adding 10%, I should be checking this ratio to make sure I'm not spiking my load relative to my own history.
Precisely. It smooths out the data. It stops you from making those impulsive decisions based on one good run. It's a personalized guardrail.
This leads perfectly into the title of today's deep dive, the 4-week cycle. Because you can't just keep adding and adding. So how do we structure this?
This is the solution to that asynchronous adaptation we talked about. We need a system that respects the fact that bones remodel slowly. And that system is a step loading pattern, usually called 3 up, 1 down.
Okay, walk us through the weeks.
Week 1 is your base, a comfortable load. Week 2 is a build week. You increase volume, maybe pushing that ACWR to 1.1, 1.2.
A little push.
Week 3 is your peak. This is the highest stress point of the entire cycle. And then comes week 4.
The cutback week.
The cutback week. Now, I have to be honest. I know a lot of runners, myself included, who absolutely hate this week. It feels like failure. You just had a great week 3. You're feeling strong, and now you have to slam on the brakes. It feels like you're losing fitness. And that mindset is exactly why people get hurt. That psychological addiction to the good run is so dangerous. The cutback week is not a vacation. It's not time off. Sun-Dried calls it an adaptation week.
An adaptation week. I like that branding better. It sounds productive.
It's scientifically accurate. Remember the osteoclasts and osteoblasts, the bone removal and the bone building?
The construction crew.
Right. The actual strengthening of the bone matrix, the part where you fill in those holes, that happens largely during rest. If you keep hammering away in week 4 and week 5, the osteoblasts never get a chance to catch up.
So the holes just get bigger.
Exactly. The cutback week is when the construction crew actually gets to pour the concrete.
I see. If you don't take the cutback, the concrete never dries.
It never dries. The protocol is to reduce your volume by about 15% to 25%, or simpler math. Just drop down to about 80% of what you did the previous week.
That's a pretty significant drop.
It is. But that reduction is what allows collagen synthesis to outpace degradation. It resets your hormones. It allows you to actually absorb the training from the last 3 weeks.
And if we skip it, if we let our ego drive the bus and say, I feel fine, I'm going to keep pushing.
That is the primary cause of what's called the week 68 crash.
Ah.
You skip the rest in week 4, you push through week 5, and by week 6, the cumulative microdamage finally exceeds the fracture threshold. Snap. You're out for 3 months.
It's fascinating how predictable it is. It's almost like a math problem that we just keep getting wrong because we're relying on feelings instead of the actual data.
Volume is a math problem. Physiology is a math problem. The body doesn't care about your enthusiasm. It just cares about the load.
Speaking of math problems, I want to touch on one more specific scenario that Sun-Dried covers, because this applies to almost everyone coming back from a break.
The comeback. This is the danger zone for veterans.
Right. Whether it's an injury or just a 2-week vacation on a beach, the temptation is to jump right back in where you left off.
I'm a 30-mile-a-week runner. I'll just go do 30 miles.
Yeah. And that is a disaster waiting to happen because of something called tendon lag.
Tendon lag, yes.
We talked about bones, but what's happening with tendons here?
When you stop training, your tendons lose their stiffness much faster than your muscles lose their strength. And in tendons, stiffness is a good thing. It makes them springy and efficient.
Okay.
So you come back from vacation, and your muscles say, hey, we remember this. We can run an 8-minute mile. But your tendons have become floppy rubber bands. They just can't handle that rapid loading.
So your muscles are writing checks, your tendons can't cash. We are back to the mismatched timeline again.
Always. It is always about the mismatch. So Sun-Dried provides a calculation for this. First, you have to establish a true baseline for your ACWR. And that means the average of your last 4 weeks.
And if I was on vacation for 2 of those weeks...
Then those 2 weeks are zeros. You have to put the zeros in the spreadsheet.
Oh, that hurts. That's going to drag your average way, way down.
It does. Which means your chronic load, your fitness baseline, is much, much lower than you think it is.
So my safe run for that first week back is going to be incredibly short.
It has to be. They also offer a penalty rule. For every week you take off completely, you should reduce your first week back by 20% to 30% compared to your pre-break levels.
Wow. So if I miss 1 week, I don't just pick up where I left off, I actually step back. If I miss 2 weeks, I'm cutting my volume almost in half.
You have to. You have to re-stiffen those tendons progressively. And for total beginners or people coming back from a really serious injury like a stress fracture, they suggest the rule of 10 minutes.
Which is?
Don't even count miles. Throw the GPS watch out the window. Just cap your increases by time. Add 10 minutes to your total weekly volume. That's it.
Why time instead of distance?
Because if you're out of shape, you run slower. So if you try to run, say, 3 miles, it might take you 40 minutes instead of 30. That extra 10 minutes is extra impact duration that your legs just aren't ready for.
That's a really good point. We obsess over distance. I did a 5K, but the body just feels time and impact.
Exactly. The body feels the beating, not the distance you post on Strava.
This whole discussion really strips the romance out of running, doesn't it? We want it to be this rocky montage of pushing through pain, but really it seems like the secret is just cold, hard math.
There's a great quote in the Sundried material that sums this all up. It says, "Volume is vanity, but unmanaged volume is the architect of injury."
The architect of injury, that is heavy.
It is. We often blame bad luck or bad shoes or bad knees. But usually we are the architects of our own injuries because we ignored the math.
Right.
The runner who succeeds in the long term, the one running marathons in their 60s, is not the one who pushes the hardest every single Tuesday. It's the one who calculates with precision.
It's the one who respects the lag time between the heart and the bones.
Exactly.
So let's just recap the big takeaways here. First, stop trusting your feelings. Your heart adapts way faster than your bones, and that feeling of I can do more is often a trap.
Correct. Respect the remodeling transient.
Second, the slow mile is a myth. Every single step is a collision. Slowing down doesn't make the impact go away.
So manage the total volume, not just the intensity.
Third, use the ACWR. Don't spike your load more than 1.3 or 1.5 times what you've been doing. And finally, and maybe most importantly, embrace the cutback week.
It's the most important week of the month. If you skip the cutback, you are inviting the injury.
I think my biggest takeaway is just how disciplined you have to be to rest. It really is harder to hold back than it is to push.
It is. Run smarter, not just harder.
So before you tie your laces for your next run, maybe open up a spreadsheet first. Calculate your ratio, see where you actually stand.
Your future self will thank you for it.
That's it for this deep dive into the 4-week cycle. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Stay safe out there.